You're not aware of it, but you're living someone else's life. Your thoughts, desires, and goals aren't yours. They're programmed. Today, I reveal the psychological prison controlling 98% of people and the shadow integration method that sets you free. Here's a truth that will make you uncomfortable. You're probably not living your own life. I know. You're rolling your eyes thinking, here we go again with another self-help guru telling me what's wrong with my life. But stick with me for the next 15 minutes because what I'm about to reveal will completely shatter everything you think you know about yourself. Picture this. You wake up tomorrow morning and suddenly realize that 90% of your thoughts, your desires, your goals, and even your personality traits aren't actually yours. They're borrowed, stolen, programmed into you by parents who projected their own failures onto you, by a society that profits from your conformity, and by a culture that rewards mediocrity while punishing authenticity. Sound dramatic? Well, here's the kicker. Research from leading psychological institutes shows that the average person makes less than 5% of their daily decisions based on their authentic self. The other 95%? Pure programming? You're essentially a biological robot following someone else's instruction manual and you don't even know it? But here's where it gets really twisted. The people who figure this out early, they're the ones running the world while everyone else stumbles around in psychological darkness. They've cracked the code that I'm about to share with you. Same code that powerful people have been using for decades to manipulate the masses, who remain blissfully unaware of their own mental prison. You think you chose your career? Think again. You think you know what makes you happy? Laughable. Most people are so disconnected from their true selves that they wouldn't recognize their authentic desires if they slapped them in the face. And the worst part? They're proud of their ignorance. Let me paint you a picture of modern society that will make your blood boil. Walk down any street, scroll through any social media feed, or sit in any corporate meeting and you'll witness the greatest tragedy of our time. Millions of people desperately performing lives they hate while calling it success. There's Karen from accounting who spent $50,000 on a wedding for a man she barely likes because society told her that's what happiness looks like. There's Michael, the successful lawyer who drinks himself to sleep every night because he wanted to be an artist. But daddy said art doesn't pay the bills. And then there's Susan, the perfectionist mom, who's slowly having a nervous breakdown trying to live up to Instagram standards, while her real dreams rot away in the basement of her consciousness. But here's the truly infuriating part. These people will defend their misery with religious fervor. They'll tell you they're practical and realistic while their souls die a little more each day. They've become so addicted to external validation that they've completely lost touch with their internal compass. Recent studies show that 87% of people report feeling like they're acting their way through life rather than actually living it. Think about that for a moment. 9 out of 10 people you meet today are essentially performing in a play they never auditioned for, following a script they never read, trying to impress an audience they don't even like. The psychological establishment has a fancy term for this: false self-disorder, but what they won't tell you is how profitable this epidemic is for everyone except the victims. Pharmaceutical companies make billions selling antidepressants to people whose only real problem is living the wrong life. Self-help industries thrive by selling band-aid solutions instead of addressing the core issue. And corporations love employees who are so disconnected from their authentic power that they'll accept scraps in exchange for their souls. Now here's where things get really disturbing. You think you're making conscious choices, but there's an invisible force that's been pulling your strings since childhood. Most people never even realize it exists. Psychologists call it the shadow self, that part of your personality that contains everything you've been taught to reject, suppress, or ignore about yourself. But here's what they don't tell you. Your shadow isn't just some abstract concept. It's literally running your life from behind the scenes, making decisions for you, sabotaging your relationships, and keeping you trapped in patterns that serve everyone except you. Picture your psyche as a company where you think you're the CEO, but actually there's a board of directors you've never met making all the real decisions. These directors are made up of your parents' fears, society's expectations, your teacher's limitations, and every authority figure who ever convinced you to doubt your own instincts. Every time you say, I should, instead of I want, that's your shadow talking. Every time you choose security over authenticity, that's your invisible puppet master tightening the strings. Every time you feel inexplicably angry, depressed, or anxious for no apparent reason, that's your true self screaming from its psychological prison. But here's the part that will really make you angry. The people who recognize and integrate their shadow become unstoppable. They stop being victims of their own psychology and start wielding it like a weapon. They see through social manipulation, they trust their instincts, and they make decisions based on their authentic desires rather than programmed responses. Meanwhile, everyone else stumbles through life wondering why nothing ever feels quite right, and why success feels empty, and why they can't shake the feeling that they're living someone else's dream. They're literally at war with themselves, and they don't even know there's a battle happening. For thousands of years, there's been a secret known only to the most psychologically advanced individuals. A process so powerful it can literally reconstruct your entire personality from the ground up. The ancient Greeks called it know thyself. Modern psychology calls it individuation. But I call it what it really is: the ultimate hack for human consciousness. This isn't some new age nonsense or trendy therapy technique. This is a scientifically backed process that allows you to literally reprogram your brain, integrate all aspects of your personality, and finally start living as your authentic self instead of a psychological fraud. The process starts with a concept that most people find terrifying: radical self-honesty. Not the kind of honesty where you admit you ate too much cake last night. I'm talking about the kind of honesty that forces you to confront every lie you've told yourself, every way you've sold out your dreams, and every aspect of yourself you've been too cowardly to face. Research from leading psychological institutions shows that people who undergo this process of complete self-integration experience a 340% increase in life satisfaction, a 67% improvement in relationship quality, and a remarkable ability to achieve goals that previously seemed impossible. But here's the catch: less than 2% of the population has the courage to actually do it. Why? Because it requires you to face your shadow, all those parts of yourself you've been taught to hide. Your anger, your selfishness, your dark desires, your unacceptable thoughts. Most people would rather live a lie than face these uncomfortable truths about themselves. But here's what the research reveals: those dark aspects aren't actually dark at all. They're simply parts of your authentic self that have been driven underground by social conditioning. When you integrate them consciously, they become sources of incredible power, creativity, and authenticity. Let me guess. You've tried meditation apps, read dozens of self-help books, maybe even been to therapy, and you're still feeling lost, frustrated, and inauthentic. Here's why. Everything you've been told about personal development is not just wrong, it's actively harmful. The self-help industry has turned authentic psychological transformation into a superficial shopping mall of techniques that address symptoms while completely ignoring the root cause. You're trying to redecorate a house that's built on a foundation of lies, and then wondering why nothing ever feels stable. Positive thinking, psychological warfare against your authentic emotions, goal setting. It's usually just another way to chase external validation instead of internal fulfillment. Mindfulness. When done wrong, it becomes another form of emotional suppression. The entire industry is designed to keep you as a customer, not actually transform you into someone who no longer needs their products. But here's the real kicker. Traditional therapy often makes things worse by helping you adjust to a life that's fundamentally wrong for you. Instead of questioning why you're depressed in a job you hate, they'll teach you coping strategies. Instead of exploring why your relationships feel empty, they'll help you communicate better with people you don't actually like. Recent psychological research reveals that people who focus on acceptance and adjustment, without first discovering their authentic self, often experience what's called adaptive misery. They become functional, but fundamentally unfulfilled. They're essentially teaching themselves to be better prisoners instead of finding the key to their cell. The real solution requires something the self-help industry can't monetize: complete psychological honesty and the courage to potentially tear your entire life apart and rebuild it from scratch. Most people would rather stay miserable than face that level of uncertainty. Now here's the method that actually creates lasting transformation, and warning, it's not for the psychologically weak. This process will challenge everything you think you know about yourself and require you to question every major decision you've made in your adult life. Step 1 is what I call the Great Inventory. A complete audit of your current life to determine what's actually yours versus what's been programmed into you. You examine your career, relationships, goals, values, even your personality traits, and honestly ask, did I choose this, or was this chosen for me? Most people are shocked to discover that up to 80% of their life structure is based on other people's expectations, rather than their authentic desires. That prestigious job, chosen to impress parents, that relationship, based on fear of being alone, rather than genuine connection, those goals, borrowed from social media and influencers who are just as lost as everyone else. Step 2 involves what psychologists call shadow integration. Systematically uncovering and reclaiming all the parts of yourself you've been taught to reject. This means getting comfortable with your anger, your selfishness, your sexual desires, your aggressive tendencies, and every other aspect of your humanity that polite society has convinced you to hide. This isn't about acting on every impulse. It's about acknowledging these aspects exist, so they stop controlling you unconsciously. When you integrate your shadow, you stop being victimized by mysterious mood swings, inexplicable relationship patterns, and self-sabotaging behaviors. Step 3 is the complete reconstruction of your life based on your newly discovered authentic self. This is where most people panic because it often means making radical changes, leaving relationships that no longer serve you, changing careers, moving locations, or completely reorganizing your priorities. The research is clear. People who complete this process report feeling like themselves for the first time and experience a level of inner peace and external success that people living from their false self can never achieve. So here's where we stand. You now know the truth that most people will die without ever discovering. You understand that the majority of human suffering comes from living someone else's life while calling it your own. You've learned about the psychological forces controlling you from behind the scenes and the revolutionary process that can set you free. But knowledge without action is just entertainment, and I know most of you will watch this video, feel temporarily inspired, and then go right back to your comfortable prison. Because change is scary, and authenticity requires courage that most people simply don't possess. The question is, are you most people? Or are you ready to join the 2% who have the courage to live their authentic life regardless of what others think? If you're ready to stop being a psychological slave and start living as the person you were meant to be, then smash that like button because it tells me you're serious about transformation, not just entertainment. Subscribe and hit the notification bell because I'm going to be sharing advanced techniques that can completely revolutionize your relationship with yourself and your life. But more importantly, leave a comment telling me one area of your life where you've been living someone else's dream instead of your own. Be honest, because until you can admit where you've been lying to yourself, you can't begin the process of reclaiming your authentic power. Remember, most people will choose the comfortable lie over the challenging truth. So the question is, what will you choose? Your future self is watching, and they're either going to thank you for having the courage to change or resent you for staying stuck in someone else's story. The truth has been revealed now. What you do with it is up to you.